Armored Core 6 bosses are savage as hell. They the type of dudes to not only take your lunch money, but they'll take your girl out on a date with it. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. A game known for its hard-as-nails missions and extravagant boss fights. Today, I'm going to rank the top 15 bosses within Armored Core 6. I'm going to rank them off lore, difficulty, and art direction, and give you my reasons why. But there's only one catch. I won't rank any of the arena bosses unless they appear within the mission structure within the game. I'm going to save those bosses for another ranking down the line. Who's going to claim the top spot? Let's find out. But first and foremost, if you've been watching my content for a little bit, please consider subscribing. I post content weekly, and you don't want to miss a thing. Thanks. Number 15, IA-02, Ice Worm. The Ice Worm is one of the sea weapons created by the Rubicon Research Institute to help protect Rubicon 3, but after the fires of Ayre, his consciousness got overtaken by Coral. Major mercenary factions come together to help take down this monstrosity, including the Red Guns, the Vespers, and the RAD. Initially, when I saw the trailer for Armored Core 6, I saw the Ice Worm and I was blown away. That boy was thick. But seriously, it really sold me on that art direction, and I was eagerly looking forward to this boss fight my entire first playthrough. But much to my surprise, the Ice Worm parallels some of my least favorite fights from all From Software games, and that's the gimmick fight. The Ice Worm fight is simply for spectacle and nothing else. This fight offers very little for challenge besides dodging missiles correctly, and it forces you to use specific shoulder weapons to break its shield in multiple phases, which I didn't love because it affected my build and how I wanted to play. There's aspects to love about this fight because it's incredibly epic and has a badass design, but I personally found it super easy, and any fight that forces me to use a specific weapon every time I fight the boss is always near the bottom of the list for me. Number 14, AA-22, Heavy Cavalry, PCA Warrant Officer. You fight this boss near the end of its mission in Chapter 3, and let me tell you, if you get to the end of this mission and you're low on ammo or you're low on repair kits, then you might as well start over again from the beginning, because this guy is ready and willing to clap some cheeks. And just to ensure your back's totally against the wall, the start of this fight has minions in the room while you fight this unforgiving PCA Warrant Officer. Not only is he stylish and carries a gigantic shield that will negate almost all damage, but he's aggressive as hell, and with his addition, it made this mission one of the most memorable missions in the first half of the game. Number 13, IA-13, Sea Spider. The Sea Spider is another sea weapon created by the Rubicon Research Institute. By a design standpoint, it's an absolute beast. Like for real FromSoft, whoever designed this boss, give that dude a raise. This design is not only massive, but it's epic, and just like the name suggests, it resembles a six-legged spider. I mean, technically, that's like not a spider, but who's asking, right? Regardless, this boss has coral weaponry that can shoot lasers at Raven-621, and he uses its 6 legs to its advantage to slam down on the player, and it moves incredibly fast. After halfway through the spider's health, it'll fly into the sky for a second phase and bombard the player with coral missiles. This fight on the first playthrough was a great build check. It really made me go back and optimize my AC, and it took me multiple tries to beat, but it's nothing compared to the next boss on this list. Number 12, AAPO7, Balteus. Man, this boss made so many people quit AC6 out the gate when this game first released. It was such a brick wall for so many players that FromSoft actually resorted to giving this guy a pretty substantial nerf. And, you know, no one's really asking, but yes, I did beat Balteus before these nerfs, so my trophy dates are better than your trophy dates. Balteus is probably one of the coolest looking bosses in AC6, and considering he's made by the PCA, it makes his lore within the game super interesting. After being caught in a coral surge, Raven-621 is attacked by Balteus to defend the watch point. His look resembles an AC with a huge tank attached to his back, and is surrounded by a pulse shield that can shoot missiles and throw fire. It's quite literally a force to be reckoned with every kind of weaponry imaginable, including a flame sword. Even after the nerfs, it's still a decently sized challenge for a first time playthrough. This fight really teaches the player to watch their surroundings and how to move quickly while dodging and responding to attack patterns, all while finding short windows to punish. Welcome to Armored Core 6, scrubs. Number 11, AAPO3, Enforcer, Enforcement System. This boss, leading up to the fight, had me shook. He literally goes from a tank with a gigantic rail beam to a freaking transformer. Most boss fights within FromSoft games have transformations, but midway through the fights, and they're typically segmented into phases, but they switched it up with the Enforcer, and had the transformation out the gate leading into the action-packed fight. Not to mention, the mission build-up leading into this fight was executed so well. During the fight, this dude has a freaking railgun and an energy sword you must dodge, or else he'll do massive damage, and a shield to negate all damage, making it hard to find windows to unload on him. The Enforcer typically takes me a few tries to beat, and the lower his health gets, the faster his attacks will become, making it harder to respond to. Overall, I would say the Enforcer is a sweet spot for difficulty in Armored Core 6, and definitely one of my personal favorites when it comes to the looks. Number 10. AAS-02 Cataphract and Duo Ekdromoi fight. Now, if I was ranking these fights solely off difficulty alone, then this fight would be near the top for sure. But considering I enjoy Cataphract as a design, it's simply just a tank that negates all damage, with an AC attached to the front being the only area you can hit to punish the boss. It's honestly annoying as shit. Alone, it's nothing too crazy and the fight's manageable. Cataphract itself isn't anything to write home about, but when you add in the two Ekdromoi ACs bombarding you the entire time, it makes this fight incredibly memorable for me. In a you can burn in hell kind of way. This fight has the machine gun and plasma gun variants of Ekdromoi, which are piloted by elite Special Forces PCA officers. Together, all three of these bosses makes for one of the hardest trio fights in the entire game in my opinion. Number 9. V.IV Rusty and Middle Flatwell fight. The V.IV Rusty fights in the second half of the game have incredible lore in my opinion. Rusty is an augmented human who pilots an AC for Arquebus and is a squad leader for the Vespers. At one point, Rusty and Raven 621 were companions, and he even helps Raven 621 take down the Juggernaut at the top of the wall. But when you play the alternate version of the mission, Unknown Territory Survey, your prior companion turned enemy will finally reveal himself as an undercover agent for the Rubicon Liberation Front, resulting in him trying to take down Raven 621. And while they're dueling, Middle Flatwell, who is also a part of the Rubicon Liberation Front, shows up attempting to help Rusty beat Raven, after he's already been weakened mid-fight, which shines a whole new light on this encounter in the game. It shows how great of a bond both these characters in the game have to sacrifice themselves to save the other. Not to mention, Rusty and Middle Flatwell's ACs have some of the most badass armor pieces, and I love their overall look, especially Rusty's headpiece. Number 8. Cinder, Carla, and Chatty Stick fight. It took Raven 621 to take out the Smart Cleaner to gain Cinder Carla's respect, but ultimately they became companions fighting on the same side. But depending on which ending you choose, you can turn your back on the RAD leader. I'm overall a fan of Cinder Carla's AC, her emblem, and her story arc within the game, and when you throw her acquaintance Chatty Stick into the mix, it makes this fight intense. The best way I found to approach this fight was to eliminate Chatty first while they circled the top part of the arena, and then finish Cinder Carla afterwards on the bottom half and use the pillars to your advantage to avoid her attacks. Some people prefer Cinder Carla first, but I think the alternative is actually easier because you can totally eliminate the bombarding missiles from Chatty Stick. As long as you always stay on the move and dodge accordingly, you should eventually pull out the win. Number 7. V.II Snail and G5 Iguazu fight. V.II Snail, the deputy commander of the Vespers, and an utter narcissist who will destroy anyone or anything in his way to further his position in Arquebus. The game spends a lot of time laying out his lore, and by the time you finally get face to face with him, you realize why that is. His AC is not only badass, but he's a force to be reckoned with, and if you aren't on your A game, this AC will crush you. But that's not the only thing you have to worry about in this encounter, because shortly after starting the fight with Snail, you'll be ambushed by G5 Iguazu, a member of the Red Guns, and someone hell-bent to destroy Raven over jealousy of Handler Walter's hound. He's desperately trying to prove that he's better than Raven, and more valuable to Handler Walter, so he's constantly challenging Raven at an attempt to claim more renown as a mercenary. Single-handedly, Snail is a hard fight, but with the addition of Iguazu, it makes this fight the toughest duo fight in the game for sure. Number 6. Nightfall Raven, King, and Chartreuse fight. King pilots an AC named Astercrown, and Chartreuse pilots an AC named Umberox. The mission starts off with both these ACs as separate parts of the map, and Raven 621 is tasked with taking both of them down. Typically, you want to take down King first considering he doesn't have a shield, and you want to take him down before Chartreuse arrives for backup. And once King is out of the picture, you'll want to unload everything you have on Chartreuse in order to take him down as fast as possible next, or else you'll make this fight incredibly harder on yourself because a third AC, Nightfall, will show up to turn the fight into a duo AC fight again. Nightfall has some really cool lore and some high payoffs in the story no matter what ending you're playing towards. Nightfall is an independent mercenary who's stolen our name, Raven, and is claiming to commit acts and destroy other mercenary factions trying to tarnish, y'all see what I did there? Our name and Handler Walter's. Now, I find this lore incredibly rewarding, and the fight can be increasingly challenging. It'll most likely take a couple tries, and ironically, for how badass Nightfall's armor is, he's actually the easiest out of the three to take down in my opinion. Number 5. IBO1 Cell 240. Arguably the hardest boss in the game, IBO1 Cell 240 is a highly advanced AC created by the Rubicon Research Institute. It moves at incredibly fast speeds and fires remote weaponry that bombards the player with coral missiles and bullets. Initially created as a sea weapon to help protect Rubicon 3 from coral-related disasters, but much like the ice worm and sea spider earlier on this list, after the fires of Ibis, its consciousness got overtaken by coral. Raven 621 finds Cell 240 at the bottom of Institute City's vascular plant, and it does what it's created to do, and that's protect coral at all costs. In my opinion, the lore behind this enemy only makes the difficulty of this fight even better, and just makes it a legendary experience for players. I'm a huge fan of the design, and the only reason I don't have this boss at number 1 is because it's incredibly difficult or damn near impossible with certain builds. On the flip side, if you use the correct build, you can crush this boss like a fly, and I just don't think it's good for balance. But each FromSoft game needs this kind of boss. I like to think of Cell 240 as Armored Core 6's Millennia, and in my opinion that's a compliment, because I love that boss. Number 4. IBO7 Sol 644 Ayre. Raven 621's mission support companion and a disembodied Rubiconian, Ayre, can communicate with Raven through the coral within its body. Unlike Handler Walter, who refers to Raven 621 as just 621, Ayre refers to them by their call sign, Raven, instead. From our mission in Chapter 1 where we take down the Watchpoint in Balteus, she's been by our side helping and influencing Raven's decision making. But depending on which ending you choose, Ayre can become the final boss in the game. Most people online consider this ending the bad ending, and I would agree with that sentiment considering it sees the death of the majority of Raven's allies in the game. The fight itself is decently challenging, and she fights with coral weaponry including a coral sword, which is one of the coolest swords in the game along with her armor set. Number 3. AAPO7A Arquebus Balteus / V.II Snail. V.II Snail has now made this list twice, but this time they've transcended their prior form and has returned as a refined version of AAPO7 Balteus' remains, equipped with enhanced weaponry like pulse and energy weapons instead of missile launchers and flame weapons, and is essentially the final boss for the Arquebus Corporation. Vesper's deputy commander V.II Snail, who's now piloting Arquebus Balteus, responds to stop the crash of the floating city Xylem into Arquebus' vascular plant. This fight, compared to the first fight with Balteus, is actually way more difficult, and he moves incredibly quick around the map. When I saw Balteus pop up for a second time, I became a shell of my former self. Not only is there no shortcomings on the difficulty side of this fight, but the lore and the boss design is badass. Some people don't like repeated boss fights, and I understand that, but without the first Balteus, the story payoffs for these kind of fights would cease to exist. Number 2. Allmind. Allmind, the true final boss for Armored Core 6 and our AI liaison for the mercenaries on Rubicon 3. They provide essential info to the mercenaries and provide multiple services such as part shops to enhance your mech and the arena to refine your skills in battle. After 2 prior playthroughs and 2 totally separate endings, you eventually find out that Allmind has actually been using the arena to their advantage by grabbing data the entire time on how to improve their skills in duels. The first half of the fight sees the player fight Allmind along with some minions, but as soon as you defeat her, Iguazu, a mercenary fueled by jealousy of Raven 621, will show up assuming control of Allmind, helping her in her efforts to obtain coral for her own personal gain. Iguazu's appearance makes Ayre show up for the fight on behalf of Raven 621, and in return, Iguazu spawns 2 sea spiders and reveals that he's also been hearing coral voices by recognizing Ayre's voice. Personally, I love the lore for the true ending. And the payout was so large because the prior endings and playthroughs were so well made, they laid out a ton of story context for the player. I love their AC designs in this fight, and it's one of the most intense fights in the entire game. The only reason it's sitting at number 2 is because the fight, although grand and tough, can be rather toxic at times. You have to really be moving at all times and remember movesets or else you'll get fried. And considering how long this fight can take to win, it becomes a real pain in the ass at times. But besides all that, this fight is incredible, and I'm happy for its existence within Armored Core 6. Number 1. IBCO3 HAL 826 Handler Walter. Handler Walter is a broker on Rubicon 3, in charge of Raven 621. Assuming the role of mission control, Handler Walter only refers to Raven by his number 621. In the beginning of the game, Walter helps 621 obtain his mercenary license, and some ACs in the game target 621 just by being associated with Handler Walter. Depending on the ending you choose, Handler Walter can also become the final boss in the game. A lot of people online consider this ending to be the good ending. Out of the two initial endings, it's definitely the better one out of the two, and seeing brainwashed Handler Walter in all coral AC attire is bad ass. His armor set is by far the best armor set in the game. Now, the fight's not really tough, but I still love it, and his coral beam of death that you cannot dodge and you must jump over is a great change for enemy attack patterns, and it baited me a couple times. Overall, Handler Walter is just a character this game made me fall in love with, and finally seeing him all hyped up on coral in the most kick-ass AC attire in the entire game made me fall in love with this character even further. Now thank you guys so much if you stayed the entire time. Let me know in the comments section where you guys would rank these bosses. Do you guys want to see a number 2 on the arena bosses? Do you guys think I'm an idiot? Let me know all of it in the comments section. Now remember to like, comment, subscribe, do anything you guys can to help me. I am just one guy and I make these videos because it is my passion. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. This has been DrewSpacely. Peace. Goddamn, that's the sexiest motherfucker in the game.